An equation is a statement that two expressions are equal. I have x plus 2 equals 9, 5x equals, or 11x equals 5x plus 6x, x squared minus 2x minus 1 equals 0. These would be equations. They have an equal sign. To solve an equation means to find all the numbers that make it true. What can we put in place of x to make these equations true? Those numbers are called the solutions or roots of the equation. And a number that is a solution of an equation is said to satisfy the equation. Solutions make up the solution set, and equations that have the same solution set are called equivalent equations. Now, a linear equation is a first-degree equation since the greatest degree of the variable is 1. These are linear equations. 3x plus the square root of 2 equals 0. Just an x. 3/4 x equals 12. This still qualifies. It's just an x to the first. This qualifies. 5/10 times x plus 3 equals 2x by 6. Again, linear equations because it's just an x to the first. Here, the square root of x is actually an x to the 1/2. So that's not a linear equation. The variable is, the degree is 1/2, not x. Here we have an x squared, so that is not a linear equation. So linear equations or not? Yes. Yes. Oops, the square root makes a no. This we would need to use FOIL and multiply. We'd end up with a 3x squared, so that's a no. We've already got a 2x squared, that's a no. 1/2, it's a 1x, it's x to the first and x to the first, so this is a yes. And this is still an x to the first, so this is a yes. That surprises some people. Now, solving equations, we use the golden rule of algebra, the properties of equality. For addition, and this also works for subtraction, if a equals b, then a plus c equals b plus c, or we could also say a minus c equals b minus c, or we could say we're adding the opposite of c. For multiplication of a equals b and c does not equal 0, a times c equals b times c. We could also have that work for division again, but c cannot equal 0 because we cannot divide by 0. So the golden rule, do unto one entire side of the equation as you do unto the other to keep the sides equal. That's why we called it the golden rule. Do the same thing to both sides. The first thing we need to do to solve this linear equation is to remove the parentheses, multiplying by -4. I get negative 12x plus 20 equals 3, and then multiplying by -1, I get negative 8x minus 7. Combining like terms on the right side, I get negative 12x plus 20 equals negative 4 minus 8x. Getting all of the x's on one side, to do that first, I'm going to add 8x to both sides. That will give me negative 4x plus 20 equals negative 4. Getting the x term by itself, I need to subtract 20 from both sides. I'll get negative 4x equals negative 24. Dividing by negative 4, I will get x equals 6. Clearing the fractions before solving equations. How many of you really like to work with fractions? Not me. So the very first thing I would do is take this entire equation times 10. And really, I'm taking each term in the equation times 10, or each side times 10. Looking at this first fraction, 10 and 10 would reduce out, and I just get 3x plus 6. Now don't forget to subtract here. 1/2 times 10, or 1/2 of 10 is 5, don't forget the y, equals, now 2/5 times 10, well 5 we're going to 10 twice, times 2, we'll make it 4y. 5 will go into 10 twice, times the 33 makes 66. Combine like terms on each side. 2y plus 6 will equal 4y plus 66. Getting the y terms on one side, maybe I'll subtract 4y from each side, so these are gone. This makes this negative 6y plus 6 equals 66. I want to get rid of this 6, it's adding, so subtract 6 right now. Negative 6y, subtract 6 from both sides, equals 60, and divide by negative 6, y will equal negative 10. Equations and inconsistent equations. An equation that is satisfied by every number that is a meaningful replacement for the variable is called an identity. When we remove these parentheses, we end up with 3x plus 3 equals 3x plus 3. It's identical on both sides, so this is called an identity. Every x value we could put in would work. So the solution set here is all real numbers. Now, a conditional equation is an equation that's satisfied by some numbers but not others. It's a conditional equation. So the only thing that works here is x equals 2. It's a conditional equation. An equation that has no solution, such as x equals x plus 1, is inconsistent. And what happens when I try to get the x all on the same side here, subtracting x from each side, subtract x from each side, I'll end up with 0 equals 1. That is false. And thus, this is an inconsistent equation. What happens here when I try to get the x's all on one side and subtract x from both sides, and it was 0 equals 1. That is false. And when you end up with a false statement, you know it's an inconsistent equation, and the solution set is the empty set. No numbers work. So we need to determine if this is identity, conditional, or inconsistent. We just start solving it. So we want all the x's on one side. I'm going to subtract 4x from each side. End up with 2x minus 9 equals 13. Add 9 to both sides. 2x equals 22, and x is 11. So this is a conditional equation.